If you're watching this talk, you probably build products in technology. I've spent over 15 years building products myself and looking at products across the industry, thinking about all the wonderful things that we can build that can help improve people's lives, make things easier at work, and generally change the world through different types of technology. But it doesn't always go according to plan. Take, for example, a woman named Kate. Kate started a new relationship with a man. It was going well. They eventually moved in together and found their dream house. In this time, they outfitted this with all of the different smart technologies that you could possibly put in. They had the smart doorbell, the smart thermostat, an assistant that you could ask questions to or set timers from, lights, anything that you could possibly automate in their house, they did, thinking it would make their lives so much easier. And for a time it did. It was easy for Kate to not have to worry about having her keys because the keypad on the door would let her in. But then over time, it started slowly. First, it would start when Kate left the house after her partner went to work, and she would get a text immediately asking, "Where are you going? When are you going to be back?" If it took her longer to be somewhere than she thought, she'd get a text saying, "Why didn't you come home when you said you were going to?" even if he wasn't home. One day she arrived home and found that her smart keypad on the door wasn't working and she couldn't get in the house. And when she went to the app to change her password and make sure she could get in, she was locked out of the app. Her partner said this was a mistake, got her back in. A few weeks later, it happened again. And as she continued to do this and try to tell people about it, they all assured her, "Oh, I'm sure it was really just a mistake. I'm sure something's just going on with the system." Then she started seeing things like being at home and having the air conditioning change all of a sudden, making it really cold in the house, or turned up randomly to be incredibly hot in the middle of the summer. And again, the keypad locked and herself locked out of the app. And there were times in the winter when it would get dark really early and all of a sudden the lights would just turn out. Again, her password disabled from the admin. Before long, this house that was supposed to feel like a wonderful place began to feel more like a prison. We build technology to help solve problems, but what happens when it creates problems instead? It can feel like every year we hear of more and more ethical scandals in tech. From the Facebook whistleblower to Theranos to the FTX meltdown that's currently rocking the crypto industry, it's easy to sit back and think, I would never do anything like that. Those are people who made intentionally bad decisions. And at the end of the day, I am a good person. I would never make those poor decisions. And that may be true. I think for most of us in tech, we want to do the right thing, and in 99% of the cases, we will. But the truth is, you don't have to be actively unethical to cause harm. Our products have the potential to cause harm in ways that we would never even dream about. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we are thinking about these things before they hit the market. It's all a matter of unanticipated consequences. It's not a matter of just unintended consequences. We have to think ahead and try to understand the things that could go wrong with otherwise mundane products. There's a famous example you may have heard of with the activity app Strava. They collect data from people running and cycling and doing active activities all over the world. And so they thought it would be fun to put together a heat map of where different activity was going on. A fairly innocent thing intended to just be an interesting experiment. But of course, as people started looking at this map and zooming in on some of the dark spots where there was a random light spot, they started noticing that Strava was exposing some things like the exact boundaries of some hidden US military bases in the middle of active combat zones. These are spaces that companies like Google Maps and Apple Maps obfuscate, so they don't provide a blueprint for bad behavior. But through this Strava app, you could clearly see the borders of these military bases, sometimes even exactly where the runways were. Building ethical products is our responsibility. And as product managers, we are uniquely positioned to help identify where things can go wrong and make sure that we aren't putting ourselves and our customers in positions to have our products used for harm. We are trained to look for edge cases. What does a screen look like if someone lands on it and there's no data? How will the UI hold up if someone has a really long name or a really short name? When I worked in products for travel, we would regularly test how our products would behave on a specific flight from Guam to Honolulu, where you land before your flight actually takes off in its original time zone. We are great at coming up with all the creative ways that our product can break and go wrong. But we spend very little time thinking about the ethical edge cases of our products. We need to examine the ethical edge cases and make sure that we're getting ahead of the problems that can happen. Thinking about things like data privacy, safety for marginalized groups in particular, accessibility or equity issues, bias in systems or algorithms, disinformation, misinformation, and the way that our product can be used to spread bad ideas, addictive behaviors, or openings for bad actors. These are just a few of the kinds of things that we should be thinking about and proactively looking at ways to mitigate against these risks. One thing that I like to do when I'm thinking about features I'm building in my products is ask a very simple question. What would the trolls do? Or put another way, how would the worst humans on the internet misuse your product if they were to get it into their hands? When I planned this talk out, I had no idea what was going to transpire in the news, but Elon Musk handed me a great example on a silver platter immediately before this talk by way of a little thing called a blue check mark. If you haven't been paying attention, Elon Musk bought Twitter, decided that verification should be available for everyone, and suddenly opened up this blue check mark, which used to identify verified people, organizations, and people of note, and told you that you could trust who they were, opened it up to anyone who was willing to pay $8. The theory behind it at the time was that the trolls and the bots wouldn't want to pay $8 to impersonate other humans or other companies. And he was quickly proved wrong. As soon as the $8 verification opened up, we started seeing a lot of examples. Most were fun at best. Nintendo of America had a new account put up, paid $8 for verification, and showed Mario flipping off consumers. Not exactly what Nintendo would like associated with their brand. Eli Lilly had an account brought up that said, "We're excited to announce that insulin is free now," with a verified check mark. This wasn't true and actually ended up impacting their stock price. People were impersonating reporters and making announcements. They impersonated sports teams. We even brought some people back from the dead, like George Washington and other figures with verified accounts. And while most of this was just fun, people playing around with different things, trying to prove a point, the conversation came through. Twitter fairly quickly paused this $8 verification and said they were working through how they can make this happen without letting people impersonate others. But the truth is, the checkmark has built up an indicator of trust over years. And Tom Coates, a Silicon Valley veteran and outspoken proponent for online safety, started listing out some ways that people could misuse this Twitter checkmark without impersonating anyone. He tweeted at their head of trust and safety, and in the course over an hour, posted 8 different scenarios. I'm going to go through a couple of them just so you can see the types of things that he was thinking about. Someone creates an account for a transgender help service and buys verification. Some trans youth reach out assuming it's anonymous, but it's run by the far right. Women are looking for someone to talk about for domestic violence and get in touch with a verified account from a legitimate looking organization, but that service is run by abusers. A local college has a society that is verified on Twitter for young gay people to get support. Young closeted gay people contact the service and then are exposed cruelly in front of people, putting them at risk. Or a man creates an account using a fake name, gets verified. His profile text suggests that it works for a prominent investment company, and people invest a lot of money with him that he then immediately takes off with. These are the kinds of things that don't require impersonation, but lean on the trust that was built out of this blue check mark for over 10 years to then cause harm for other people. And it doesn't take a lot of time or thought to see where these things could go wrong. But it's also easy to look at these cases like Twitter and Strava and some of the bigger apps and think, oh, well, my product doesn't have anything like this. We're not a social media app. We don't have exposure in this kind of way. But you really can. I built a travel app called TripCase for several years. We were fairly early in the mobile travel game. And at the time, it was a really popular thing to have apps automatically post things on Facebook. So if you were around during this time, this was in the area when Spotify would post every song that you're listening to on your Facebook page. Not really sure why this ever happened. But we started talking about the potential of auto sharing your trips on Facebook. People were doing this already themselves, posting when they were going on vacation, posting the cool places they were going. Some would even take screenshots of our app and put it on their Facebook page. So we thought, let's do a thing where you can automatically share. It didn't take us long to realize how horribly this could go wrong. Simple things like you post you're going on vacation and now somebody knows you're not at home and uses that opportunity to break into your house, to more complex scenarios of someone forgetting to turn off the auto share and then traveling to a job interview in a city that only their company's largest competitor is the primary employer in. These are simple things to think about to see where this could go wrong. And we decided a little fun on Facebook wasn't worth the risk that we were opening our users up to. More than happy for them to take a screenshot and share themselves, but we didn't need to automatically do it for them in a way that could be forgotten. Mariah Hay was a VP of product at Pluralsight and spoke at a Mind the Product conference talking about the ethical responsibilities of product managers. For those who don't know, Pluralsight is an online platform where you can take courses around coding and other skills that can help you upskill yourself as a professional. And she told us a story at one point at Pluralsight where they were introducing features to assess skills to help surface relevant content in courses for the learner. Of course, as soon as people started taking these assessments, companies started reaching out to Pluralsight saying, hey, can I get that data for my employees? It would be really great to understand what their what their skills assessments are and where they need to improve and where they're really good right now. And our team started talking about if they would feel comfortable with this and why it felt a little on the edge of icky. They realized that sharing detailed data with the employer could have unintended consequences. While these employers were wanting to use this for good purposes, it didn't take much for you to see cases where it could be turned against employees and used for things like approving or denying promotions, or determining an employee's annual raise, or even used as an assessment they required people to take before they could be hired into the company. This was not what these assessments were built for. They didn't feel comfortable with them being used for these kinds of purposes, and it's just not how they wanted their product to be used. So her team decided not to give the individual assessments to the employers and ended up coming up with other ways to meet those employers' needs without putting the safety and trust that their users had in Pluralsight at risk. Through this example, she talked through some ethical principles that she and her team came up with that they then went on to use in evaluating other situations. So the principles that she shared were, number one, don't weaponize the product. Don't turn your product, which is supposed to be something to make people's lives better and easier, into something that can be weaponized and used against them. For many obvious reasons beyond the harm, it's just not good for you as a company or as a product because your users will lose trust and stop using the thing that you've built. Number two, find your blind spots. Think about the areas that you or the people on your team are not aware of or could use some additional perspectives in. And look for other people to find the things that you might not be able to immediately recognize. This might mean looking for people who don't look like the people on your team to come and evaluate the features you're wanting to build or the things you're wanting to try to see if there's ways that it could be harmful. Going back to Twitter, there's a lot of conversation right now about the racial slurs and disparaging comments and things and the proportion that they're coming out at the moment. And you see a lot of people who maybe look like me, are fair-skinned and white, or are male, who are saying there's not much change in what they see. But if you talk to people of color, they're saying it's very different. And the things that are coming out and the comments that they're getting have gotten worse. So don't assume that because you don't see it, it's not going to be happening within your product. In addition, think about the other areas that you need to evaluate that you don't know. Things like legal considerations or compliance considerations. Bring those people in and help them evaluate where your product could go wrong. And then her third principle was be 200% accountable. And this is really important for all of us. It's easy to say, I didn't build my product for that, so therefore it's not my fault. It's not my fault that somebody misused my thing in a way that I couldn't have anticipated. But we need to be 200% accountable, 100% accountable for ourselves, and 100% accountable for the way our products are used. And by having this feeling, it will make us take more seriously our responsibility to our users. The truth of the matter is, making ethical decisions about our product can be hard. It can mean that we have to make decisions that go against hitting our OKRs, or that make us that make our metrics go in the wrong direction from what we're hoping. But at the end of the day, our OKRs are not more important than somebody else's life or somebody else's well-being. These decisions aren't always easy, and we have to have the courage and be strong to hold the line and make sure that we're not letting people talk us down from anticipating harm and mitigating against it. Now, it can be a little hard to think about, particularly if your product is not social or B2C, to really think about where to start in evaluating your features. So here are a few resources you can use to help. One is Ethical Explorer at ethicalexplorer.org. They provide a toolkit that you can use that have several different types of harm and prompts and questions so that you can start to think about how your product interacts with this dimension and what you might do to mitigate some of the risk. Not all of the areas will impact you, but it's a good way to start to think about where your exposure could be and where those ethical edge cases lie. There's a workshop called Consequence Scanning Workshop that was developed by .everyone.org.uk. And you can go and find out about how to run this workshop with your team to start thinking about where your product could be misused. ThoughtWorks has created the Responsible Tech Playbook. It's easy to Google for if this link is too hard to remember, but check out the Responsible Tech Playbook with a lot of resources and a lot of thinking in this realm. And finally, Kenneth Bowles has written a book called Future Ethics, which is great. On his website, he has a lot of resources and thinking around our responsibility to create ethical products and how we can do this, how we can make the world actually better. There are many more resources out there, but this will help get you started if you're looking about how to take that first step in evaluating your product. Martin Erickson, the co-founder of Mind the Product, opened up one of our Mind the Product conferences by talking about the great power that we have as product managers and product people in tech, and the great responsibility that comes with it. And as we end, I want to echo his call to action today. He said, it's time to stop moving fast and breaking things. We have broken enough in this world by not thinking about where our tech could be misused. Instead, let's move intentionally and build better things. Thank you.